All right, we're talking about arguments. Number one, briefly explain the ideas of validity and soundness and how they apply to deductive arguments. Can a valid deductive argument be unsound? Can a sound deductive argument be invalid? Here's an example. So I'm going to give a premise, another premise, and then I'm going to give a conclusion. Okay, so here's a premise. All dogs are, let's say, blue. Then I'm going to say Katie is a dog. The conclusion is that Katie is blue. So the question now is about whether this is valid and about whether this is sound. So this is valid because the conclusion follows from the premises, right? So whether or not the premises are true, if they were true, then the conclusion would have to follow, right? That the conclusion follows from the premises being true. Now, this is not sound because this is not true, right? So one of the premises is false. To be a sound argument, to be sound means that it has to be valid and all the premises are true. All right, so it has to be valid and all the premises are true. Okay. Which of the following correctly explains the idea of validity? So in order to be valid, the conclusion has to follow from the premises. A deductive argument is valid if the conclusion follows necessarily from its premises. That's B. Which of the following correctly explains the idea of soundness? Soundness means that you're valid, the conclusion follows from the premises, and all the premises are true. A deductive argument is sound if the conclusion follows necessarily from its premises and its premises are true. C. Can a valid deductive argument be unsound? Here's an example where it's valid, but it's not sound because one of the premises is false. It says the argument's conclusion could follow necessarily from its premises without the premises being true. Can a sound deductive argument be invalid? No, since a deductive argument must be valid for it to be sound. So a sound argument has to be valid and all the premises have to be true. What is a chain of conditionals? Give an example of a valid argument made from such a chain. A chain of conditionals is a type of deductive argument that involves 3 or more conditionals. Give an example of a valid argument made from a chain. So in order for it to be valid, I need the conclusion to follow directly from the premises. Well, if P then Q, if Q then R, then if P then R. That is true. That is a valid argument, I should say. Decide whether the following statement makes sense or is clearly true or does not make sense or is clearly false. Explain your reasoning. Through the logic of deduction, I will show you that if you accept the truth of my premises, you must also accept the truth of my conclusion. That makes sense. In a valid deductive argument, the conclusion follows necessarily from its premises. Rephrase the argument if necessary so that the first premise has the form for all S or P or no S or P. Then draw a Venn diagram to determine whether the argument is valid. If possible, discuss the truth of the premises and whether the argument is sound. All valleys are deep. Shallow hollows is a valley. Shallow hollows is deep. Let X represent shallow hollows in the Venn diagram. Which Venn diagram below shows the correct placement of the variable X? Well, all valleys are deep. Shallow hollows is a valley, and shallow hollows is deep. So it is both a valley and it is deep. So it's a valley and all valleys are deep. It's this one. This necessarily follows from the premises that makes it valid. The argument is not sound because not all valleys are necessarily deep. So it's not sound because one of the premises might be false. Rephrase the argument if necessary so that the first premise has the form all S or P or no S or P. Then draw a Venn diagram to determine whether the argument is valid. If possible, discuss the truth of the premises and whether the argument is sound. All mice love cheese. Sarah loves cheese. Sarah is a mouse. This does not follow from these two things, right? If it said all mice love cheese and Sarah is a mouse, then Sarah loves cheese. That would be different. But it says all mice love cheese, Sarah loves cheese. That does not mean Sarah's a mouse. She just loves cheese like mice love cheese. That does not mean that she is a mouse. So we're not actually sure if Sarah is a mouse or not. So here is where we're going to put Sarah on the boundary. Right here on the boundary, because we're not sure whether she should. We do know she loves cheese, so she's in here. So we're not sure whether she should be in the mouse or whether she should just be loving cheese and outside the mouse. So the way that we represent this uncertainty is that we put her on the boundary, neither being inside the mouse circle and not being on the outside of the mouse circle, because we're just not sure. If the stated conclusion is contained in the Venn diagram from the premises and the argument is valid, is the argument valid? It is not inside, so it is invalid. And so, of course, if it is invalid, it cannot be sound. Rephrase the argument if necessary so that the first premise has the form all S or P or no S or P. Then draw a Venn diagram to determine whether the argument is valid. If possible, discuss the truth of the premises and whether the argument is sound. All managers can whistle a tune. John is a manager. John can whistle a tune. That is a valid argument that the conclusion follows from the premises. We're talking about C. All managers can whistle a tune. John is inside the managers and he can whistle a tune. If the stated conclusion is contained in the Venn diagram for the premises, then the argument is valid. Is the argument valid? This argument is valid. A deductive argument is sound if and only if it is valid and its premises are true. This is iffy. It's not clear that this is actually true. It's likely that at least one of the premises, at least one premise is false. Consider the following argument. All islands are countries. Bermuda is an island. Bermuda is a country. Draw a Venn diagram to determine whether the argument is valid. I'm liking A. That's a nice valid argument. Which of the following are true statements? Select all that apply. The first premise is true. I'm not sure if all islands are countries. There's some islands that are not countries. The second premise is true. Bermuda is an island. I'm liking that one. And therefore, it looks like because the first premise is not true, the argument could not be sound. Because in order for the argument to be sound, all the premises have to be true. If necessary, write the given argument as a chain of conditional propositions that have the form if P then Q, then determine the validity of the entire argument. If a natural number is divisible by 12, then it is divisible by 4. If a natural number is divisible by 4, then it is divisible by 2. The conclusion is if a natural number is divisible by 12, then it is divisible by 2. This argument is very much valid. Yes, because there's a clear chain from a natural number is divisible by 12 to a natural number is divisible by 2. I'm liking that. If necessary, write the given argument as a chain of conditional propositions that have the form if P then Q, then determine the validity of the entire argument. If taxes are increased, then taxpayers will have less disposable income. With less disposable income, spending will decrease and the economy will slow down. A tax increase will slow down the economy is the conclusion, and that argument is valid, but let's go ahead and write this if P then Q about the second premise. If taxpayers have less disposable income, then the economy will slow down. That's what it's saying. Write the conclusion as a conditional proposition that has the form if P then Q. If taxes are increased, then the economy will slow down. I'm liking that. The entire argument is valid because there's a clear chain from taxes are increased to the economy will slow down. State whether it is possible for a deductive argument to be not valid and not sound. If so, make a simple three proposition argument that demonstrates your conclusion. So not valid means that the premises do not lead to the conclusion, and of course if it's not valid, it's already not sound. So let's see here. Let's just find one that's not valid. All living mammals breathe. All monkeys are mammals. All mammals are monkeys. This makes absolutely no sense. Not valid. And of course, that means because it's not valid, it is also not sound. Let's just check the other ones just in case. All living mammals breathe. All monkeys are mammals. Then all monkeys breathe. That's perfectly valid. All mammals fly. All monkeys are mammals. Then all monkeys are fly. That's not sound, but that is certainly valid. State whether it is possible for a deductive argument to be valid and sound. If so, make a simple three proposition argument that demonstrates your conclusion. Can you be valid and sound? Yep, we're just looking for something that's sound. So yes, it's possible. Let's see which one it is. Yes, it's possible. All living mammals breathe. All monkeys are mammals. All living monkeys breathe. So that is valid, and everything here looks absolutely true, so that makes it also sound. State whether it is possible for a deductive argument to be valid with true premises and a false conclusion. If so, make a simple three proposition argument that demonstrates your conclusion. So I want an argument to be valid with true premises and a false conclusion. Let's see what's going on there. No, this is not possible, right? Because you can't, so for an argument to be valid, the conclusion has to follow directly from the premises. And if the premises are true, there's no way that you can get a false conclusion directly from true premises. So no, it is not possible. Hope it helps.